Hello and good evening. If you're watching this, it's time to quiet the mind. Let the gentle gameplay of Minecraft and the narratives from Reddit drift you into a state of deep relaxation. My hope is that this brings you a restful night's sleep. Story 1. The silent hitchhiker I pick up every week takes all my anxiety away. I just found out where he's been putting it. My world is small. It's composed of the four walls of my tiny rented apartment, the soul-crushing beige cubicle where I work, and the worn-out vinyl seats of my late father's car. The car is the only thing he ever gave me that felt like a gift instead of a burden. It's a heavy, old boat of a thing, a relic from an era I never knew, and most nights it's my sanctuary. You see, I have this pressure, a constant low-frequency hum of dread that lives behind my eyes. It's a cocktail of financial anxiety, social awkwardness, and the crushing existential weight of a life that feels like it's being lived on a treadmill, set to a slow, grinding pace. Some nights the pressure gets so bad, I feel like my skull is going to crack. So I drive. I drive down a long, lonely stretch of state highway that cuts through the darkness between towns. It's a road to nowhere, really. Just two lanes of cracked asphalt flanked by endless, silent fields and the occasional skeletal tree. It's out there, in the deep velvet black of the night, that I do something I know is stupid. I pick up hitchhikers. I know the risks. I've seen the news reports, heard the horror stories, but the truth is I'm lonely. And the quiet, contained intimacy of sharing a small space with a stranger for a few miles, it helps. It's a brief, fleeting connection in a life that has none. A way to feel like I'm not the only person awake in the world. The first few were normal. A young soldier on a weekend leave, his uniform crisp, his stories of basic training both boring and fascinating. A college kid with a beat-up guitar case heading home for the holidays. They talk, I listen, and for a little while, the pressure in my head would ease, replaced by their stories. Then, one night, I picked him up. He was just standing on the shoulder of the road, a tall, thin silhouette against the faint glow of the moon. He wasn't thumbing a ride. He was just standing there, waiting. I pulled over, my gut telling me to keep going, but my loneliness and boredom won out. I opened the back door and slid in without a word. He was off. His clothes were simple, dark trousers, a button-down shirt, but they were cut in a style that was vaguely out of date, like something from a photograph from 30 or 40 years ago. He was unnaturally still, his hands resting on his knees, his posture rigid. He didn't speak. He just stared straight ahead and with one long, pale finger pointed down the road. I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. "Sure thing," I mumbled and pulled back onto the highway. We drove in total, unnerving silence. The usual classic rock station on my old AM radio seemed to have faded to pure, hissing static the moment he got in. The silence in the car was so absolute, it felt like a physical weight pressing in on me. I kept glancing at him in the rearview mirror. He never moved. He didn't even seem to be breathing. Miles crawled by. The knot of anxiety in my stomach, the pressure behind my eyes, it was a screaming, frantic thing now. The enclosed space of the car felt like a coffin. I was about to pull over, to tell him to get out, when he slowly, deliberately lifted his hand and tapped twice on the passenger side window. We were in the middle of nowhere. No lights, no houses, no crossroads. just the empty road and the dark fields. I pulled over. He got out as silently as he had gotten in, closed the door with a soft click, and stood on the shoulder of the road as I sped away. I didn't look back. And then it happened. It was like a switch was flipped. A dam inside me broke. An incredible, inexplicable wave of pure, blissful relief washed over me. The crushing pressure in my head didn't just ease, it vanished. Completely. The knot of glass in my stomach dissolved into warm, liquid peace. The static on the radio suddenly cleared, and a song I loved came on, sounding crisper and more vibrant than I had ever heard it. The air in the car, which had felt stale and suffocating, now tasted clean and sweet. I took a deep, shuddering breath, the first truly deep breath I felt I had taken in years. The dread of my job, the fear of the bills, the constant, grinding anxiety, it was all gone. I was light. I was happy. I spent the rest of the night driving with the windows down, singing along to the radio, feeling a joy so profound it was almost a religious experience. The feeling lasted for 2 glorious days. I was a different person. I was confident at work. I made jokes with my coworkers. I slept a deep, dreamless, perfect sleep. But by the 3rd day, the pressure started to seep back in. A slow, creeping tide of the old dread. I knew what I had to do. I had to find him again. That night, I drove back out to that lonely stretch of road. I drove for an hour, a desperate hope warring with the fear that it had just been a fluke, a bizarre one-time psychological event. And then I saw him, standing on the shoulder in the exact same spot, as still and silent as a statue. My heart leaped. I pulled over. He got in. The same unnerving silence, the same empty miles, the same 2 taps on the window, and the same glorious, euphoric, soul-cleansing release the moment he was gone. It became my therapy, my addiction. Once a week, every Tuesday night, I would make my pilgrimage. I would drive out to the road, and he would always be there. I would pour all of my accumulated stress, anxiety, and sadness into the silence, and he would take it. He would carry it away into the darkness, leaving me clean, light, and free. My life transformed. With the anxiety gone, I was able to function. I got a small promotion at work. I started talking to people, making tentative friendships. For the first time, I felt like I was actually living, not just surviving. All for the price of a few gallons of gas and a silent weekly ride with the ghost. But after a few months, the effects started to diminish. The high wasn't as high. The relief wasn't as absolute. The feeling of peace would only last a day, then half a day. The passenger was still taking something, but it felt like he was only taking the top layer, leaving the deeper, older anxieties untouched. I needed more. I needed a stronger dose. And if he only fed on my negative emotions, I realized, with a chilling addict's logic, that I would have to give him more to eat. I started to cultivate my own misery. I began to farm my own dread. I started small. I deliberately missed a bill payment just so I could spend a few days with the cold dread of a late fee notice hanging over my head. I'd take on extra, impossible deadlines at work, knowing I would have to work myself to the bone just to feel that raw, frantic stress. And it worked. The more miserable I was during the week, the more powerful the release was on Tuesday night. The high was back, better than ever. So I pushed it further. I started picking fights with my boss over trivial things, reveling in the hot, angry surge of adrenaline and the subsequent days of walking on eggshells. I started borrowing money I didn't need just to feel the crushing weight of the debt. I was a self-destructive artist, and my medium was my own life. I was tearing it apart, piece by piece, just to have a stronger negative emotion to feed the silent man in my car so I could feel a few hours of peace. It was a vicious, insane cycle, and I was completely, hopelessly trapped within it. The accident happened 3 weeks ago. It wasn't even his fault, not directly. It was mine. I was driving home from a deliberately terrible day at work, a day where I had accidentally deleted a crucial file, incurring the full, screaming wrath of my supervisor. I was buzzing with a potent cocktail of shame and anxiety, already looking forward to my ride the next night. I was distracted. I ran a red light. It wasn't a bad crash. The other driver was fine. My old car was crumpled, but fixable. My only injury was a clean break in my left tibia, a broken leg. At the hospital, as I was lying in the ER, a doctor came in with my x-rays. He put them up on the light box. "Well, the good news is it's a simple fracture," he said, pointing with the pen. 6 to 8 weeks in a cast and you should be good as new. He paused, his brow furrowed. He tapped a spot on the x-ray, a little higher up on my tibia, away from the break. "But what is this?" I looked, frozen. There, on the image of my bone, was a strange, dark, spiderweb-like growth. It was a shadow on the film, a patch of darkness that didn't belong. "It looks like some kind of a lesion," the doctor said, his voice now a low, clinical murmur. "A tumor, maybe. We need to run some more tests." The next week was a blur of scans, needles, and quiet, worried conversations in hospital hallways that I wasn't supposed to hear. Finally, the doctor sat me down in a small, sterile office. He had a file in his hands and a look on his face that I knew was not good news. "I'm not going to sugarcoat this," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "The growths, they're not just in your leg. They've spread. They're in your lungs, your liver, your spine. It's a very, very aggressive form of cancer. And the strangest part is, we can find no record of it in your previous medical files. It's as if these tumors, already at a late stage, have appeared out of thin air in just the last few weeks." I just stared at him, my mind a roar of white noise. He kept talking, using words like prognosis and palliative care and making arrangements. But I wasn't listening. I was thinking about my silent passenger. I was thinking about the weekly ritual. I was thinking about all that pain, all that anxiety, all that dread I had fed him. It hadn't just vanished. It had to go somewhere. Did he converted them somehow? He had taken my mental anguish and transformed it, giving it back to me in a new, physical, and utterly malignant form. The tumors were my anxiety. They were my dread. They were the physical manifestation of all the poison I had willingly cultivated and then handed over. The doctor's final words cut through the haze. "There are some treatment options we can try, but to be frank, I've never seen anything progress this quickly. I can't predict what will happen." But I could. I knew what would happen. The doctor had said it was too late. There was no cure for this. And in that moment of absolute, soul-crushing certainty, a strange, quiet calm settled over me. I'm dying. That is a fact. And with that fact comes a whole new world of fear. The fear of pain, the fear of the unknown, the fear of leaving nothing behind. It's a vast, crushing, ultimate anxiety, the strongest dose I've ever had, and I know exactly what to do with it. I checked myself out of the hospital this morning. My leg is in a cast, but I can drive. My old battered car is waiting for me. And tonight is Tuesday. I'm writing this as my final goodbye and as a warning. Be careful what you wish for. Be careful of the easy solutions, the silent helpers who offer to take your burdens away. It's better to carry your own pain. It's better to face your own dread, because the things that offer to take it from you are not your friends. They're just looking for a new place to put it. I'm not afraid anymore. That's the strange part. My decision is made. The doctor said my time is short. So why should I spend it in terror? Why not spend it in that clean, pure, blissful peace, even if it's just for a day or two? It's time to go now. My car is waiting. The lonely road is calling. And I know with an absolute certainty that he'll be out there, standing on the shoulder, waiting for me. And I have one last beautiful, terrible gift to give him. One final ride. Story 2. I finally met my online friend, but he's been dead for years. I guess the best place to start is the beginning. Back when I was 13, I lived on my computer. I'm not exaggerating. While other kids were sneaking out to drink cheap vodka or hook up in the back seats of their parents' cars, I was hunched over a glowing monitor, half blind from staring too long at message boards and multiplayer lobbies. It was lonely, sure. But loneliness is easier when you convince yourself everyone else is living in a world you'll never belong to. Online, I could pretend. I could be wittier, braver, smarter, hell, even taller. No one could see how awkward I was, how greasy my hair got, how my voice cracked like a broken radio signal when I spoke. That's when I met Cal. At first, it was just random banter in a late-night horror game forum. He replied to one of my posts about creepypasta stories, something about how most were garbage, except for the ones that almost sounded like they could be true. His username was simple: Caliber 13. No edgy anime avatar, no wall of gifs and sparkly signatures, just a default gray icon and a handful of thoughtful comments. I don't know why I answered him, but I did. One reply turned into a back and forth, and before long, we were messaging outside the forum. Then voice calls. Then video. It's strange, looking back, how fast I trusted him. Maybe because he never pushed for anything. He never teased me when I stammered, never asked for pictures I wasn't comfortable sharing, never seemed bored when I went off on one of my tangents about the dumbest stuff. He was safe. By the time I was 15, Cal was the closest friend I'd ever had. Over the years, we grew up together, digitally at least. I remember his laugh, this low, gravelly chuckle that always sounded like it belonged to someone older. He claimed he was only a year ahead of me, but I never pressed him on it. It didn't matter. We shared everything. My first heartbreak? He was the one who stayed up on voice chat until sunrise, telling me the girl didn't deserve me anyway. His first job? He streamed his shifts in a dead-end convenience store so I could keep him company while he mopped the same yellowing tiles over and over. And then, like these things often go, life got in the way. College, jobs, relationships. Months would pass between our conversations, sometimes a year. But whenever we reconnected, it was effortless, like no time had passed at all. The last real chat we had was about 2 years ago. He'd been cagey, quieter than usual, said he'd been dealing with family shit. He wouldn't elaborate. His camera was off that night, which was odd because Cal always liked to be seen when we talked. But I let it slide. I figured he'd tell me when he was ready. Fast forward to last month. I just moved for work. Small town, new place, no friends. I was unpacking boxes when a notification pinged my laptop. A Discord message. From Cal? Still alive over there? My stomach dropped. Not in a bad way, but in that weird nostalgic way, like hearing a song you forgot you loved. We talked for hours that night, catching up on everything we'd missed. His job, my job, his headaches, my insomnia. Somewhere in the middle of it, I asked the question I'd always wanted to. Hey, why don't we actually meet in person? There was this pause, longer than it should have been. I thought maybe he'd ghost me again. But then he typed, "Yeah, maybe it's time." I should have been excited. How? I was excited. But something about the way he said it nagged at me. He didn't suggest a place, didn't ask about my schedule, just said he'd let me know soon. The following week, he finally gave me an address. Not a restaurant, not a cafe, just a street corner in a town about 40 minutes from mine. It felt off. But I told myself I was being paranoid. After all these years, wasn't this what I wanted? To finally see him face to face? So I went. The town he directed me to was quiet, like a place suspended in amber. Rows of brick storefronts, most of them boarded up or closed early. The kind of main street where even the streetlights seemed tired. I parked, double-checked the address, and waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. Finally, I saw someone across the street. Tall, dark hoodie, standing completely still under the flickering orange glow of a street lamp. Something about him made my chest tighten. He didn't wave, didn't move toward me, just stood there. And though I couldn't see his face, I knew, deep in my bones, that was Cal. I almost didn't get out of the car. My hand hovered on the door handle for what felt like forever, knuckles white, my pulse hammering so hard I thought I might throw up. It's not like I expected some Hollywood reunion, but I thought he'd at least wave, maybe grin that crooked grin I'd seen 100 times on camera. Instead, he stood there, stiff as a statue, under that buzzing street lamp that made his shadow jitter like it had a life of its own. Finally, I forced myself to move. I shut the door quietly, like I didn't want to disturb something. Cal? My voice cracked on his name. The figure tilted its head, just slightly, like a dog hearing a sound it can't place. And then he walked toward me. Up close, the details didn't match my memory. His hoodie looked faded, almost bleached in strange patches, like it had been left too long in the sun. His jeans hung loose, frayed at the knees, and his skin, God, his skin looked pale. Not just pale, but thin, like there was nothing underneath it. But when he spoke, the sound was right. That gravelly chuckle, the familiar cadence. Long time, huh? I swallowed hard. Yeah, too long. For a second, the tension broke. I even smiled for a bit. But then I noticed something. His lips didn't move when he talked. At first, I thought maybe it was the bad streetlight playing tricks on me. But as he went on, traffic bad? You look taller than I imagined. Still a night owl? His mouth barely twitched. The words came out clear, but his face stayed slack, almost frozen. I laughed nervously, trying to cover the unease gnawing at my gut. Guess so. You look different than I expected. He tilted his head again, just like before. Do I? Yeah. I mean, older, maybe? That chuckle again, low and dry. Guess we've both changed. We walked. He didn't ask where my car was, didn't suggest going anywhere. Just drifted down the sidewalk, and I followed like an idiot.
I tried to fill the silence. Remember that game we used to play, Dead Horizon? I can't believe the servers are still up. His response came too fast, too sharp. I remember. Man, those nights we stayed up until 4, raiding. I remember. I stopped talking. His voice had an edge to it now, like every word was being forced through clenched teeth. When I glanced sideways at him, I noticed something that made my throat close up. His eyes. They weren't focused on me. They weren't focused on anything. Just wide, glassy, staring dead ahead, as if he was walking a path he'd memorized long ago. We stopped in front of a boarded-up storefront. The wood was rotted, curling at the edges, spray paint half scrubbed away. This used to be a diner, he said flatly. I worked here, once. I frowned. Wait, I thought you worked at a convenience store. Another pause. Then, as if reading from a script, I did. I worked here too. I worked everywhere. Something about the way he said it made my skin crawl, like the words weren't his. I forced a laugh. Well, that's vague as hell. You're not giving me much to work with here, man. That was when he turned to me fully for the first time. And I swear to God, his face didn't look like Cal anymore. It was close, sure. The bone structure, the stubble, even the faint scar on his chin. But there was something stretched about it. Like a mask molded almost right, but not quite. His smile was too wide. His eyes too dull. His skin too smooth where it should have been rough. I'm glad you came, he said, soft. And though it was Cal's voice, I felt ice flood my veins. Because for the first time, I realized I didn't know who the fuck I was talking to. I barely slept that night. I lay in bed replaying every second, every word from the encounter, trying to convince myself it hadn't been as strange as I thought. Maybe the lighting was bad. Maybe his hoodie made him look thinner. Maybe I was just nervous, projecting all my paranoia onto him. But no matter how many excuses I stacked up, I couldn't shake the memory of his mouth. The way the words came without movement. The way his glassy eyes stared straight through me. And that face. That almost but not quite face. Like someone had built a replica of my friend from memory and hadn't gotten all the details right. By morning, I was convincing myself I'd imagined half of it. Sleep deprivation does weird shit to you, right? Distorts perception, warps memories. I opened Discord. No new messages. I scrolled back through our chat history, desperate for something to ground me. Jokes we'd shared, links, the stupid memes we used to spam each other with. They were all still there. But when I scrolled far enough back,
I found something I swear hadn't been there before. A message sent from his account, dated almost 6 years ago. Cal, don't forget me. That was it. No context, no follow-up. Just that single, lonely sentence sitting in the middle of years of conversation. I stared at it until my eyes burned because I knew I'd never seen it before. I would have remembered. Later that day, I had tried to ground myself the way normal people do, by looking for something physical. Proof that Cal had been real, that our friendship wasn't some bizarre fever dream. I dug through my old hard drives, found screenshots, clips from our late-night game sessions, his voice on recordings laughing at my awful aim, his webcam feed in the corner, blurry and pixelated, but undeniably him. But the deeper I searched, the stranger it got. Some files wouldn't open. Others played with corrupted audio, his voice warbling and stretched, syllables drawn out until they sounded like groans. And in one folder, a place I didn't remember ever saving anything, I found a video file titled cal_lastchat.mp4. The timestamp said it had been created 2 months ago. I hadn't talked to him in 2 years. I clicked it open with shaking hands. The footage was dark, grainy. Cal sat in his bedroom, the one I remembered with the peeling posters and slanted blinds. He was staring at the camera, unmoving, his face slack, eyes glassy. For nearly a full minute, he didn't blink, didn't speak. And then without his lips moving, that gravelly voice filled the speakers. "You said you wanted to meet." I slammed the laptop shut so hard I thought I cracked the screen. For the rest of the day, I couldn't focus, couldn't eat, couldn't convince myself of what was real anymore. Had I imagined him? Had I fabricated this friendship across my entire adolescence? Was I so lonely that I'd built a person out of scraps of forums and voices and late-night dreams? I even Googled his old username, Caliber13, hoping to find old forum posts to prove he wasn't just some figment of my mind. But every thread where he'd once replied was gone, deleted, scrubbed, like he'd never existed. That night, I lay awake in the dark, sweating through my sheets. I picked up my phone more than once, thumb hovering over his name in Discord. Every time, I stopped myself. What was I even going to say? "Hey, did you mean to look like a mannequin wearing my friend's skin last night?" Around 3 a.m, just as I was drifting off, I heard the notification ping. One new message. "Cal, you still want to know the truth?" My mouth went dry. I didn't type a response. I just stared at those words. The cursor blinking in the silence of my room. And then, "Cal, meet me again." The second meeting wasn't my idea. I told myself I wouldn't go. That I'd block his account, delete Discord, bury my old hard drives, and just forget it all. But at 3 a.m, his message still glowed on my screen. "Cal, meet me again." I couldn't resist. I needed answers. The address he gave this time wasn't a street corner. It was an old park on the edge of town. I remember driving past it once, the rusted swing set jutting out of the weeds like bones. I went just after dusk, when the last light was draining from the sky. The park was empty, silent, except for the insects thrumming in the grass. He was already there, waiting, sitting on the swing. The chains creaked as he swayed gently back and forth, his sneakers scuffing the dirt. He didn't look up until I was only a few steps away. "Hey," he said. And for the first time, his lips actually moved with the word. I almost felt relief. almost. Until I noticed how his mouth lagged behind the sound, like a bad dub in a foreign film. We talked, or tried to. I asked him where he'd been all these years. He said, home. I asked him about the diner, the convenience store, his family. He said, I worked everywhere. I lived nowhere. Family is gone. I asked him why his messages were showing up with impossible dates, why his voice came out of him wrong, and he just smiled. Didn't try to stop me, just said, I'll see you soon. I drove home like a bat out of hell, checking the rearview mirror every 30 seconds, half expecting to see him sitting in my back seat. When I got to my apartment, I locked every door, every window, shoved a chair under the doorknob, and then I sat in the dark, trembling, waiting for him to message me again, because I knew he would, and I knew I wouldn't be able to stop myself from answering. I couldn't shake the dog walker's face, that look of raw, unfiltered fear. Not confusion, not annoyance, fear. It told me more than anything else could. I wasn't imagining this. I wasn't just tired or nostalgic or spiraling into paranoia. Something was deeply wrong with Cal. And I needed to know what. The first step was the basics. Name, birthplace, anything. But here's the thing. After nearly a decade of friendship, I realized I knew almost nothing about him. His full name had never come up. I'd never seen a driver's license, never heard him mention a hometown. It was always just Cal. I tried his old username, Caliber13, again. This time I went deeper. Cached pages, old archives of the horror forum where we'd first met. Most of it was gone. Erased. Deleted. But in a forgotten snapshot from 2012, I found a clue. One of his posts had a signature block he must have added briefly before removing. A line of text that read, Calvin R. Fear only feels real if you let it. Calvin. It felt strange to see the full word, like I had uncovered something I wasn't supposed to. I copied it into Google, adding the name of the state I'd moved to. And then my stomach bottomed out, because the first result wasn't a profile or a LinkedIn page or some grainy Facebook account. It was an obituary. Calvin R., age 19, passed away unexpectedly in 2015. I couldn't breathe. I clicked the link with shaking hands. There was a photo. It wasn't crystal clear, grainy like it had been scanned from a printed yearbook, but it was him. The same crooked jawline, the faint scar on his chin, the same eyes. The obituary mentioned a car accident. Foggy night, late shift, black ice. He'd been working at a convenience store when it happened. The date of death was 8 years ago. 8 years. And I had talked to him 2 weeks ago. I told myself it had to be a mistake. Maybe it was someone else with the same name, the same look. But I couldn't let it go. The funeral home was still listed. A tiny place 2 towns over. The next day, I drove there. It was a squat brick building with peeling paint and an old sign swaying in the wind. The man at the front desk looked confused when I asked about Calvin. You a relative? He asked. No, just an old friend. He squinted at me, like weighing whether to send me packing. Finally, he sighed and disappeared into the back. When he returned, he set a yellowing folder on the counter. Inside was a single page. Death certificate. Name Calvin R. Age 19. Cause vehicular accident. Date February 7th, 2015. I stared at it until the words blurred. The man cleared his throat. You said you were a friend. Yeah, I croaked. Online. He gave me this look I'll never forget. a mixture of pity and unease. "You're not the first," he said quietly. My head snapped up. "What do you mean?" He closed the folder. "A couple of people have come through here, over the years. All said they were friends, all swore they'd talk to him. After, I couldn't speak. Sometimes," the man added, his voice dropping, "the dead don't stay put. Some of them linger. Some of them change." That was when I left. That night, back in my apartment, I sat with the obituary pulled up on my laptop. The picture of Calvin, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. I didn't know if the person I'd been meeting was really him, or if it was something that wore his face. But one thing was clear: my best friend had been dead for nearly a decade. I don't have long. I'm typing this with the lights off, every lock bolted, the chair still braced under the doorknob. My laptop is on the floor, screen dimmed, the only glow in the room. Because he's outside. I know it's him. It started about an hour ago. A knock at my door, 3 slow raps that rattled through the wood. I froze. Didn't answer. Then came his voice, muffled but unmistakable. "Hey, it's me. Let me in." I stayed silent. Another knock, louder this time. "You wanted to meet. I'm here."
And then, through the door, he laughed, that same gravelly chuckle I'd known since I was a kid. It's been 30 minutes since then. He hasn't left. Every few minutes, he speaks again. Sometimes it's soft, coaxing. "Come on, don't be scared." Sometimes it's sharp, angry. "You owe me. I gave you everything." And once, God help me, once it was my own voice coming from the other side. "Please, let me in." I tried calling the police. My phone wouldn't dial, just static in my ear, like someone breathing too close to the mic. I tried messaging friends. Discord wouldn't open. The only chat still active was his. He's typing now. I can see the notification blinking. Typing, typing, typing. It never stops. A few minutes ago, I heard the sound of metal groaning. I think he's working at the lock. The chair under the knob trembles every so often, like something heavier than a man is pressing against the door. And then I looked up. There's a shadow under the frame. It doesn't look like feet. It looks like hands. Flat against the floor, fingers stretching too long, bending the wrong way, dragging themselves closer. I don't know what's going to happen when he gets in. I don't even know if this is Cal anymore. Maybe it never was. Maybe I built him and he built himself back out of me. All I know is this: he won't stop knocking, and I'm running out of time. If anyone reads this, if anyone knew him too, don't answer. Don't meet him. Don't let him in. Because once you do, he doesn't leave.